We're back. It has been a long time, but we are back on the Hockey Podcast. Welcome. You can follow us, of course, on Twitter at podcast_hockey. Facebook, of course, you can like us on Facebook. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, welcome on the Hockey Podcast. You can also subscribe on YouTube, as well as subscribe on iTunes, Google, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And it has been, good grief, after going like 28, I think it was 28 out of 33 days, it felt like it's like more than 7 days without a podcast has been like, it's like withdrawal. Do you guys feel like a withdrawal has happened?
Yeah. It's felt like a full like off season, honestly, considering how many podcasts we did during the playoff runs for the Flames and Canucks and even the Leafs.
Yes, we included that Leafs. So Chris is with us. Hello, Chris.
Hello. I'm glad to be back, even though work hours and you guys doing the morning podcast reviews just didn't work out timing wise. So I'm glad to be a regular contributor again.
Yay! And Sean and Heidi, hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, it was this past week we spent the week up in Wainwright visiting Heidi's family, and it's nice to be back here in Calgary and back on the podcast.
Yes, and great to have you. And Devin is with us as well. Hello, Devin.
Hey, guys. I'm just going to pull the e-break right now and do a full stop on this entire podcast for right now. The reason why is because at the end of last podcast, Kevin, we kind of did a thank you to everybody, and we did not thank Kevin. So I want to be a part of the thanking committee and thank Kevin for everything that he's done, because without Kevin, we are nothing. He does everything behind the scenes pretty much. So round of applause for Kevin, and Kevin, pat yourself on the back. Thank you for everything that you do, man.
Okay. Well, thank you. Oh. Now I'm going to – is it raining outside? No. Yeah. Well, no, thanks, everyone. Did I thank all of you guys?
Yeah. You thanked everybody, and then you gave the floor to Kevin and I, and Tyler and I, and we didn't really thank you. So I realized that after we stopped recording. So I just thought you deserve your spotlight, and so here it is.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Well, at least you rectified your mistake there, Dev.
I wasn't the only one on. I want to point that out, Tyler.
Yeah, Tyler's not here. Tyler's chasing bears, I think. If someone I'll have to point that out, retweet, or Tyler was chasing a bear yesterday. So I think that's where Tyler is today. I think he's chasing bears on the north. Hopefully Noble Nation is still with us today, and hopefully you can make your comments on Facebook. I put up a poll. We'll get into this a little bit more. Which Canuck should be the number one priority for the Canucks to re-sign? And I put Markstrom, Tanev, and Toffoli because those are the three big ones. But kind of now that we have a bit of a step back, we'll start with the Canucks, and then we'll talk about this team. Has anyone heard of a team called the Calgary Flames?
Who?
What? Calgary Flames? They were an NHL team. They have those guys. Well, we'll have a conversation about them as well a little bit later, and then we'll get into some NHL stuff a little bit. But kind of now that the Canucks season's over, we had Jim Benning who did his end of the season availability. Travis Green did. We've heard from a number of different players. Now that it's over, a week after the loss to the Vegas Golden Knights, what are you thinking? How are you feeling? Where are you at with the Canucks? And especially, I don't know how much hockey you've watched since kind of seen where the other 4 teams are. Where are you at with where the Canucks are? We'll start with Chris.
Like, we exceeded expectations this season. So really, I'm just happy that we got as far as we did. Like, no one was expecting us at the start of this season to not only make playoffs, but to push to Game 7 of Round 2. Like, sure, a lot of that was due to goalies standing on their heads to get us to that point. But, yeah, we were playing with house money, and I'm proud of how far they got. And I'm excited for the future.
Yeah, the Canucks, they got everything. Travis Green got everything he could out of that roster. Tyler Myers was playing with like only one shoulder. Toffoli was playing on one leg. It was he got everything he could. They just they're not quite there yet, and going up against a tough team like Vegas, that showed. But seeing what Demko did in games 5, 6, and 7 was fantastic. And then going forwards, it was it's quite promising, and it adds another wrinkle to what this offseason is going to look like for the Canucks, because with the flat cap, despite them having around $14 million in cap space, that cap space is going to go away pretty quickly if they want to re-sign players like with the amount of free agents they have. Names of Markstrom, Toffoli, Tanev on the UFA side, as well as Gaudette, Virtanen, and McEwen, Mott on the RFA side. So it's going to be a very interesting offseason for the Canucks. They have got some really key pieces that can really help them develop into a contender, hopefully. But this is going to be the make or break offseason for Jim Benning and the current Canucks front office, because if they screw this one up, they're screwing up some major prime years for the Petterssons and the Hugheses on this roster. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens and what major moves they make, because there are going to be major moves that the Canucks make this offseason.
And if you think Canucks Twitter is toxic as far as pro and anti-Benning, it's only going to get more and more ramped up this offseason.
Yes, we'll get into that. I'll address that in a minute, but I just want to hear from Heidi and Devin, sort of from your Flames fans' eyes. What did you see from the Canucks, and do you feel right now that the Canucks are way ahead of the Flames, or just a little bit ahead of the Flames, or are you not worried about them at all?
So like I actually managed to like kind of watch the last couple of games that the Canucks were in. I was being a good girlfriend and sitting and watching with Sean. I mean, they definitely, like, I feel like they play with more heart than the Flames do. So I would say that they're definitely, I think they're a little bit of ahead. They're ahead going into next year for sure. I think, but not. I wouldn't say like super duper ahead. Like they still have their issues as well, but yeah, they look better than my team, and that was frustrating to see. But then again, as most Flames fans know, our team is super frustrating, and being a fan of them is an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, the Canucks, I feel like they took a massive step forward this year. I don't know if they're ahead of the Flames. I mean, if I was going to put a percentage on it, they're probably 51%, that 1% better than the Flames. I'm just curious on next season how Jim Benning's going to really solidify this roster. Are you going to have Markstrom back? You're going to have Toffoli back. Where's Jake Virtanen going to be? Chris Tanev, Troy Stetcher, among those UFA and RFAs as well. So I think there's a potential for a step back next year for them. But with the heart that they showed throughout this playoffs, I feel like they're definitely up there, or they can be up there if they keep on pushing in the right direction.
Okay, so let's get to Benning, because there has been the I don't trust Benning now. We need a new GM and then there's some that are like, we need, let's keep on with Benning. Sean and Chris, do you trust Jim Benning to go forward?
Yeah, I think he's learned from his mistakes. I think he's you look at what he's done over the past, I think, 18 months. Basically, ever since the January of not this past season but the season before, trading Goodbranson for Tanner Pearson was a stroke of genius. He was able to get a top 6 board for a plug of a defenseman. And then, you can quibble over the Tyler Myers contract. You can quibble over the Michael Furlan contract, but the Furlan one, I think you can't really quibble too much over because of injuries and everything. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him there, because I think he wants to play, but I don't know if the Canucks are going to be willing to risk that with him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But in terms of building a roster, I think he knows what to do. I just don't. It's whether or not he can pull it off in terms of trying to make it all the pieces fit within the cap. With it being a flat cap this year.
Yeah, like, have I agreed with every single movie he's made? No. But am I generally a supporter and believe in what he's trying to do? Absolutely. I don't think he should be in the hot seat at all. I think he should be proud of how far he's gotten this roster. Has he made some boneheaded moves as far as, signing guys to maybe too much term? I think so. But I think he's learned his lessons, and he's gotten continually better over the years. So, like Sean mentioned, this is going to be a big test for him this offseason, and we'll see how he does.
If Devin's theory is that there could be a step back, does that put more pressure on Benning? Do you see would you be okay with somewhat of a step back if the Canucks are able to go forward further?
Yeah, but it just depends on what that step back looks like. If they take a step back because they've let Markstrom go and they've given the reins to Demko and he struggles a little bit going from a 1B backup to a 1A starter, but you're making that right step and giving the reins to him, that's something to be okay with. If they decide to revamp the blue line and it doesn't quite work, but they're younger, then that's fine. That means we're building with this core of Pettersson and Hughes and Horvat and Besser. But if they stick with the more veterans and then take a step back, then that's something to be very worried about.
Fair. Chris?
No, I agree with that.
Heidi, Devin, do you trust Jim Benning from where you see? Does he frighten you as a GM?
No, it doesn't frighten me, no.
Yeah, I mean, each GM, they have a potential to make boneheaded moves, and Jim Benning has. He's made some, but he's also made some really good ones too. So, am I afraid? No, I trust Brad Treliving more than I trust Jim Benning going forward, and I see there's definitely potential there, and it's whether or not he can make the right moves. And then not just making a move for the sake of making a move, but making the proper moves for the right price going forward is going to be massive for him.
Okay, that's okay. So that's you made an interesting point. So I want to address then the poll question. Maybe we'll address this individually. I do want to talk specifically about Jake Virtanen as well. So, Sean and Chris, we didn't hear from you, but we had this debate last week about Markstrom and Demko with Isha. Shout out to Isha and Tyler and Devin and I discussed Markstrom or Demko. And I feel like we were split on this topic, actually. So, Chris, do you bring back Markstrom or do you let him walk and go with Demko? And
I know Sean's not going to like my answer because it's too much sitting on the fence, but I'm really split. Like, I'm really not sure just because how good Demko was and how good I think Demko can be versus how good Markstrom's been for us the past 2 seasons and the raise I know he actually deserves. So yeah, as far as trying to balance that out and which one you go with, to me it's kind of, I feel like we're going to be pretty successful either way. It's just a matter of who your bias is towards, I guess.
For me, it just comes down to what's the price for Markstrom and what's the term for Markstrom. If you can keep it to 5.5 at the most and 3 years at the most without any movement clauses to hamper you going into next summer's expansion draft with Seattle, then yeah, bring back Markstrom and go with a tandem, because I think you're going to need 2 solid goaltenders next year. We don't know when the season's going to start. We don't know how long the season's going to be, but no matter what it is, I think we're going to see a very compressed schedule, and you're going to need to make sure that you can roll 2 goaltenders more than you would on a normal season. So making sure that you have 2 solid goaltenders should be a priority for any team going into next season. There's a reason why Montreal went out and is willing to spend over $12 million on their goaltending next season and acquiring Jake Allen.
That price point, I 3 years at 5.5, someone else is going to offer more term and probably around $6 to $7 million. It's whether or not Markstrom wants to stay at that point, because that's way too low for a top 5 goalie in this league.
And I understand that, but I put this out on Twitter yesterday. Wondering with the landscape that the world is in and the uncertainty that we have, I wonder how much players are going to value certainty and stability and trust with organizations more than money at this point. Giving up maybe some money to stay in a stable situation and knowing that you've got a goaltending coach that gets him, you know that you've got a head coach that gets him, and a team that he knows, and in a city that he knows and trusts, in a city that has handled this whole situation with the pandemic pretty well comparatively to, say, a lot of the cities in the States. Is that something that the Canucks can leverage to try and keep the cap hit and the term down and not have to give them, say, a no movement clause to a point where they actually have to either trade Demko or lose him for nothing in the expansion draft? The performance that Demko put in at the end of the series in versus Vegas really helped the Canucks bargaining power, because they can play a little more hardball here. They've got the goaltender of the future in Demko.
So wouldn't that deter Markstrom from re-signing? Because if you think about it, if you have if his no trade clause, if he doesn't have one in there, but he's doing 3 years at 5.5, I see him walking. I don't see him staying, because it doesn't make much sense. If I was Markstrom, it wouldn't make much sense to me if I'm going to trust Vancouver and making sure that I'm going to be okay. Why would I put it in their hands to trade me somewhere else potentially? Because they need to make sure that they have Demko going forward.
Well, he can still have a limited no trade clause or even a full no trade clause. It's the no movement clause that Canucks need to avoid. The no trade clause does not preclude them from being able to expose him in the expansion draft. And they can find ways to structure the deal to make him less attractive to Seattle. Say, you put a signing bonus that's due, say, September 1 of $4 million type deal, or structure the deal to a point where it's like, if you draft him, you have to pay him a significant chunk of cash before you've even played a single game. So there's ways to get around it. But what I'm trying to say is, you have the ability to play a little more hardball with Markstrom and say, we're willing to go with Demko at this point if you're not willing to give us a bit, like, not if you're not willing to come down and meet us at this point, whatever that point is, they can do it. Maybe it is 3 years at $6 million, because the rumored deal for Leonard right now and is 5 years at $5 million, and he's about 18 months younger than Markstrom. So for me, you play hardball with Markstrom, figure out what that line is, term-wise and money-wise, and say that no matter what you sign, we're not signing you to a no-movement clause. We'll give you the no-trade clause, but we're not giving you the no-movement clause. And then if he says, "Look, I'm going to go test UFA," then you explore your options elsewhere to bring in a solid veteran goalie to tandem with Demko next year, because Demko looks like he's ready.
So I just want to throw a different scenario at a couple different scenarios here. I'm going to ask first, Heidi, Devin, would you be interested in bringing Markstrom in as the goaltender next year?
Yeah, I was about to jump in there. It's like I would want, like, I think for the sake of the Canucks, like, if you guys could keep Markstrom and Demko, like, if you could keep both somehow, if you could make that work, that would be smart for you. But me speaking as a Flames fan, I would love to have Markstrom. So have a tandem of Markstrom and Talbot. So.
And I guess that's the thing, right, is which situation. And it's easy to look at this and say that you can play hardball with Markstrom because you think you have some advantages. But I could look at Calgary has some advantages over Vancouver right now in terms of things that they can offer. Edmonton sort of does too, maybe, depending on how you look at Edmonton and then depending on how Edmonton runs. But there are situations, I think, that if you're Markstrom, could be a better situation than what is in Vancouver, and he could make more money.
Yeah,
but I don't know if you can play as much hardball with Markstrom as people think that you can.
Yeah, I agree with Kev there. You can try and play hardball with him, but he's just going to walk. I mean, there's going to be 31 and eventually 32 other teams that will want him, being a top 5 goalie in this league, and Colorado being one of them with having a lot of cap space, right?
Yeah,
and
that's one situation that nobody's talking about is Colorado. If Colorado had a goaltender, they would have been in the Final Four.
Totally, and they're in a winning mode right now, and they can offer the money, the term, and give you a chance to win a Stanley Cup within the next 3 years. So to me, I mean, I would love him in Calgary. He'd be amazing in Calgary, but it'd be hard to run a tandem. Or I guess the other question would be, what are you doing with Riddick? Because Riddick has one more year left. Could it be a sweetener, Tyler? A sweetener in a deal? But who knows exactly? There's going to be a lot of movement here within the NHL the next 3-4 months, and who knows exactly what's going to happen here. You could be looking at St. Louis as well as potential landing spot for a big goaltender, potentially like Markstrom, and have a tandem of Markstrom and Bennington. So I don't know. There's a lot of potential here for a lot of moves.
Like, I think it's not necessarily a hardball, what maybe it was the wrong term to make, but to use. But I'm saying you have your line, and you don't cross it with Markstrom. If it's 3 years at $6 million, that do it. Like, find a way, because the two that you have to look at, the first one you have to look at is Markstrom. Okay, are we bringing back Markstrom? And if you do, then you can potentially really revamp that blue line a little bit more. You can walk away from Tanev. You can bring back Stetcher at a lesser cost and try and use some depth elsewhere to try and bring in some more help on some younger puck moving blue liners. Or if you go with Markstrom, then I would probably bring back Tanev, because you want to be able to insulate Demko a little bit better with very strong defensive defenseman, which Tanev is. And then you've got Toffoli, who I think they definitely need to bring back, because he rounds out that top 6 really well. And he provides some flexibility for Travis Green in terms of his lineup as well. So I think the first person they have to make a decision on is Markstrom, and that will change. That will determine how they approach the rest of their UFAs and RFAs after that.
Okay, let's get to Tanev. From the Canucks perspective, I'm going to have to disagree with Sean a little bit. I don't know if I'm bringing back Tanev at the price that I think he wants to be paid at. I don't know if I would consider him a top 4 defenseman going forward, because I do think Tanev or not, you're going to need to improve that blue line. That has to be, in terms of positions, that's the offseason priority in my mind. But I think Tanev is going to get paid on this market. And I think that there is a number of defensemen out there that I think can do what Tanev does at a little bit of a cheaper rate. Now, I understand what you're going to say, that there's a lot of intangibles that Tanev brings, but I don't know if at the price point that Tanev is going to want to be paid, that I would be comfortable bringing him back.
What's that price point, Kev?
I think he's probably going to want over 6.
No.
I
don't see it. Not on a flat cap. Not when doesn't have. He's not an offensive guy. Goals and offense pay. He's making 4.5 now. I don't think he makes much over 5, and it's going to be a 1 or 2 year deal.
Especially with his injury history too.
And if there's anyone who's going to look at stability, trust, confidence, and comfortability in a situation, it's Chris Tanev. He loves it in Vancouver. He wants to stay. I bet you he takes around $5 million for 1 to 2 years and continues to just do an evergreen one year deal type deal to end his career in Vancouver. I think that's what he wants to do. I don't think
him and Edler are totally on the same level in that regard. I think both of them are lifers at this point and would want to just finish their career here.
I could see it happening. I don't see him going out for money the way that maybe Markstrom and Toffoli might. I don't see it.
Why wouldn't he?
Why wouldn't he? Because he's not wired. I don't think he's wired that way. I think he's quite happy making $5 million a year for next season and potentially another season to play with, say, Quinn Hughes and watch this core grow. He's put a lot of emotional energy into helping these young players. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to make to be a bit of more of a team, take a little bit more of a cut type deal, and help this team build and grow and see what they can do in the next 2-3 years.
So if you're Winnipeg, I'm just throwing this out there, if you're Winnipeg or Toronto and you're offering 3 years at $19 million total,
Toronto can't afford that, Kev.
I'm just throwing this out as a scenario. I'm not saying that this can be done. Or even a Colorado, you don't think Tanev would take it?
I don't think he gets there. That's the thing, Kev. I don't think he gets there. I think he makes a deal before he gets the UFA. There isn't that like 1 week
negotiating window,
legal tampering period like that we've had in the past few years. I honestly, we talk about Markstrom being the first one that they have to make a decision on, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tanner's the first player off the board in terms of UFAs for the Canucks, because they'll go, would you like $5 million for 2 years? Yeah, sure. And then they'll probably throw in some trade protection, and boom, they're done.
I see it completely different because with his injury-prone years, and he's 30 now, so it's going to put him to 32, 33 at let's say 15 million throughout those 3 years. And I don't know. With the uncertainty of the NHL, with the uncertainty of the economy, and I think there's way more to it now than it would be back before COVID hit. And I feel like players are going to be looking for stability and certainty, cost certainty. So you're putting a lot on his character, and I could be completely wrong with this, and I mean, who knows what he's thinking? But I see it completely different.
You're willing to eat crow if he's right?
As long as you cook it properly.
All right. So from five days ago, tweet from Rick Dollyball from Wade Arnott, like quoting Wade Arnott, Chris Tanev's agent. Chris has always stated his desire is to re-sign in Vancouver, and that has not changed. We'll see how the Canucks wish to proceed. I really do think that he's not going to take a massive pay cut, and he like I say, he's making 4.5 now. If they bump it up to about around $5 million for 2 years, I don't see why he passes on that. He loves it. He loves it in Vancouver. He loves being dad to the team. They're gonna bring in some more younger players next year. Ole Levy likely, as maybe even a couple other up front. He's gonna relish being continuing in the role he's in now, and I do think that he's gonna. If there's anyone who takes that, I'm not saying that every player is going to look to that and go, I'm going for stability, going for sticking with the franchise I've been with for a while because I trust them. I understand. I feel more comfortable with them. I'm not saying every player is going to do it, but if there's one player I do think is going to do that, like I feel confident in, it's Chris Tanev. I don't think he's going to go chase the big bucks when he's when he knows he can still make a significant chunk of change and still live a very comfortable life in Vancouver, in one of the better cities in North America, and when with a franchise he's been with his whole career, and he's basically become one of the key off ice figures for them. So if there's anyone who goes that way, it's going to be Chris Tanev. I don't foresee him looking for $6-7+ million in a flat cap scenario, and that's part. I really do not see it.
I think this is going to all. I see both sides of this. I'm being Chris, and I'm being the fence sitter in some ways. I see what you're saying, but at the same time, it's maybe so much different if a Winnipeg comes and offers something. If somebody offers something ridiculous, I think that this is a game changer. And
yeah, but he's not going to get there. I'm saying he's not getting to UFA. If the Canucks decide that they want to keep Chris Tanev, he's not getting to UFA, and they're not getting that chance.
Okay. So Calgary's not.
No other opinions. No one can say anything.
So Calgary's not going to have a chance at Tanev. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, like if the Canucks decide that they want to sign Tanev and they offer him $5 million at 2 years or something around that, he's not getting to UFA. He'll sign that. It was just like Edler last summer. It went right down to the wire, but they got him signed before he got to UFA, and no one else had a chance to sign him.
Brian Burke could be on a plane to Stockholm, and it's not going to make a difference.
You could be right. You could be right. We'll see. I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I'm saying I don't know. I think it's easy to say that, but if there are rumors of someone offering something significantly more, who knows? That's going to be.
Also, I don't foresee teams overpaying for someone like Chris Tanev, who doesn't provide that much offense. He does provide value, but at the right price. We're looking you look at the Canucks at fan base and how they treated Tyler Myers this year. He made $6 million. He didn't produce that much offensively, and he's getting he gets beaten like a dead horse every time he makes a mistake.
Tanev, in my eyes, is like a upgraded version of Chris Russell. Just a shot blocking, defensively sound machine.
He's a little bit better with the puck, but yeah, exactly. You're not if you overpay for that, you're screwing your team up. And I could see if he gets to UFA, I could see teams making some big offers for him, but I'm saying he's not making UFA if the Canucks want to sign him.
Okay. All right. Tyler Toffoli.
This is a tough one because I think it goes into what happens with the other two. Because I think as much as if I think they need to sign him, I think they do, and it's just gonna be interesting to see what he commands because he doesn't have the same loyalty to the Canucks that Tanev has and Markstrom has. So I'm very interested to see. I think if out of the three, he's the most likely to hit UFA.
Yeah, he's the hired gun, if you will, out of all our potential UFAs.
Where is all this money coming from?
Exactly, right?
Where's this money coming from?
That's the problem.
Oh man, you're gonna sign all three?
If the only way they can sign all three is if they were able to move out some cap. If they were able to find a way to
don't say Louis Eriksson, please.
Robidaw Islands, Furland. If they can find a way, to do what Pittsburgh did with Bukestad with Brandon Sutter. If they can find a way to, yes, in perfect world, blue sky, they find a home for Louis Eriksson. That's the pill that fixes everything. That's the apple cider vinegar that fixes everything. Like,
come on, Ottawa. Come on, Buffalo.
But in reality, they need to they have to get a little bit creative and find a way to move players like Brandon Sutter out and find out what they can do with Michael Furland and all that. So it's going to be very tough. I don't think they sign all three. Personally, I think they're going to decide on two of them. If it's up to me, I think the best way to go is to go with Tanev and Toffoli and run with Demko. But it's a tough choice. It's a very tough choice. I don't envy Jim Benning in trying to make that decision.
So, Chris, you want Toffoli back?
I would very much like Toffoli back, and he was saying the right things in the presser that he did for his end-of-season interview. But like I was saying earlier, if there's one UFA that we have that is going to be a hired gun and will walk for more money, it's going to be a Toffoli. That being said, I very much think that he is like that one piece that we were missing that kind of pushed us into a playoff team. He was only here and only played 17 games. I think it was like 7 in the regular and 10 playoff games or something to that factor. And just the impact he was able to make in that short window was huge. He turned our power play from maybe middle average to above average, one of the best in the playoffs. So, like, I really want him. I'm just not sure if it's likely to happen.
I think he's going to be a significant piece in a UFA. I think it's very likely he's going to be overpaid. That's another one I could see probably a Colorado or a Nashville jumping on with all their cap room and probably paying him a lot more than he's worth. Calgary folks, would you want Toffoli? Is there a price that you would like Toffoli at? I'm not saying Toffoli's going to Calgary, by the way. I'm just asking, like, in terms of, like, is this a person you would be interested in?
I don't know why you wouldn't be.
I think that's he'd be a great addition to the Flames. Put him on that second line with Backlund and Tkachuk. Upgrade Mangiapane to that top line, or vice versa. Have a scoring line of Monahan, Gaudreau, and Toffoli, somewhere along those lines. But there's just so much uncertainty with each roster. It's hard to place them as of right now.
The one thing with Toffoli, though, is I don't think he's going to want to go too far away from California.
I think he's going to want to stay on the West Coast or West Side. And I would seem to me like it would be the California teams, Vancouver, maybe Vegas and Arizona, maybe
or Colorado.
Or Colorado, yeah. Like those 7 would have an option. But for me, I guess from my perspective, we haven't gotten to Virtanen yet, but for me, my two priorities would be Markstrom and Toffoli, and let Tanev go, because I do think you can get a Tanev light in free agency. I mean, I think of a guy like Travis Hamonic as an example. I think would be a guy that the Canucks can look at. Mark Borowiecki. There are going to be options Tanev like out there that I think that you can pay less. But I do see where you're coming from. But my two priorities would be Markstrom and Toffoli. And because I understand your sample size with Demko, but I'm with Tyler. It's a sample size, and I don't know if unless you are convinced that there is another goalie out there that will take a bit of a hit, like a Talbot or someone else, a Grice or something like that, I'm not sure I'm going to run the ball with Demko next year.
Well, again, it's going to be a tandem next year. So if you let Markstrom go, you have to bring in a veteran goalie to tandem with Demko. Let's say Markstrom goes to Calgary, that means I don't think they re-sign Talbot. I'll say that right now.
Yeah,
it'll be a Markstrom Rittich tandem in Calgary if that's the case. And Cam Talbot will be a fantastic pickup for the Canucks to play in tandem with Demko. But it's a really tough decision with all three. And then we still haven't touched any of the RFAs. Okay, well,
the big one. I think Mott's coming back. I don't think Mott has to be a priority of the RFAs, in my opinion. I'm just going to put it out there. Tyler Mott is one of my RFAs that I'm signing first. I think 100%. I think you need that type of guy in your lineup.
2 years, $1.2 million.
Done. Okay. What do you do with Jake Virtanen?
Trade him.
Is that an easy trade?
Depends. I think it's going to be something like a. Okay, I'll throw this out there. Sven Baertschi, Jake Virtanen for Josh Anderson, and throw in another contract, a bigger money contract.
Absolutely no way. That's lunacy for Columbus to accept that. There's no way that would happen. I mean, you're throwing in a AHLer in Sven Baertschi, and you're throwing in a project like Jake Virtanen for Josh Anderson.
8 goals in the regular season, Devin.
Character, man. Where's his character? Where's his professionalism? Where's his head at? And that's the big question. He can produce if he wants to, but does he want to?
You know who could get the best out of Jake Virtanen though? It is John Tortorella.
It's true.
I don't know if I think that would actually. I wonder if that would be worse for him.
No, it'd be perfect for him. He's hard-nosed. He'll go to bat for Virtanen. Tortorella is like the perfect coach for Jake Virtanen. So maybe you're not throwing in Baertschi. They have shown interest in Baertschi before. I'll just put that out there. Columbus has shown interest in Baertschi before, but if you that's the type of deal. But what I'm trying to get at is that's the type of deal that the Canucks are probably going to make with Jake Virtanen. If they do it, it's going to be either he's going to be a bit piece in a big deal, or it's going to be a swap for another RFA who's also a project player, and that's what Josh Anderson is as well.
Josh Anderson, he has a higher ceiling than his potential is higher than Virtanen in my mind, and I don't think Columbus bites on that. I mean, you can throw that around all day, but I feel like another team would have a better offer on the table before.
Maybe, but that's the type of deal. That's the type of deal they're going to have to do. It's going to be project player for project player.
Yeah, if you can get Virtanen, if you can move Virtanen, I think it's easier to sign Toffoli for sure. And I do think for Virtanen's sake, wherever he goes, I do think it would be better than where he is in Vancouver. I think a new scene would help him. I've said this before, he reminds me of Zach Kassian in that I think he's going to be a late developer into finding out exactly who he is. And he's not going to be, whoever takes him, he's not going to be a perfect player. He's going to have his flaws, and you're going to have to decide if those flaws are worth keeping around. But I think he will he will be better out of Vancouver than he was in Vancouver, and Canucks Twitter will be upset when that happens. But I think that that's just the reality of the situation.
Canucks Twitter upset.
It's shocking. I know.
Never.
Never.
That being said,
They're some of the calmest people in the world that are on Canucks Twitter.
That being said, Kev, the biggest RFA the Canucks have to make is Adam Gaudette.
Well, to me, that's you sign him. Like,
Yeah, but can you get him locked up long term? That's the big key. That's huge for me, because I could see him developing into a absolute someone you can rely on for 40 to 50 points consistently and be a key player for the Canucks and their depth going forward. If you can get him locked up 3-4 years at sub $3.5 million, that's going to be a steal of a deal. And that's going to be something that the Canucks need to get done this year.
Go ahead, Devin.
I just see a bridge deal for him. 2-3 years at probably $3 million, maybe 3.5, and that's with the flat cap being the way it is. That's pretty good.
If it's a bridge deal, it'll be less than $3 million, I think.
Yeah, I'm thinking bridge deal for him too, and I think that Gaudette Green relationship is going to be very interesting going forward, because I think I know that Travis Green doesn't like Adam Gaudette on the wing, and I think he prefers him at center, but there were times I think in these playoffs that if he used Gaudette on the wing, it may have been better. I don't know, but Gaudette's definitely going to get more ice time next year.
Gaudette needs to really spend all his offseason and as much contact with Manny Malhotra as possible, and learning how to be a face-off, to be able to take face-offs and be a consistent face-off winner. That was one of the biggest reasons why he wasn't relied upon by Travis Green, is he never was able to feel comfortable that Adam Gaudette was going to be able to win a face-off, especially in the defensive zone.
That's fair. Yeah, no, I agree.
Plus, they need to give him someone else skilled to play with on that third line.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, if you sign Toffoli, you've got your top two right wingers figured out. I do think I said this last week. I think you need to bring in another top six forward if it is at all possible. I think you move Tanner Pearson down to the third line. I don't really think he's a top six forward anymore and on this team. Or you find a way to have Gaudette and Mott play together more, because I actually really liked them together. I don't know if you can give Mott more minutes, but it's Pearson-Mott combination, something like that. I can see going forward. In terms of the Canucks, is there anything else that we do need to talk about?
I wouldn't be surprised to see a Travis Green contract extension this offseason as well.
Yeah, I think that will probably happen. Probably sooner rather than later, I think.
And the only other thing I would add is that with that press release that Aquilini put out, it looks like no matter the financial situation for the Aquilinis, they're spending to the cap. They realize how important this team is to the market and how much of a cash cow it can be when times are good.
They are not pulling a Buffalo.
No. We do have a comment in the Facebook group from Jeff Schneider. I don't know if he's related to Chris Schneider.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Dad. But he agreed with me and would let Tanev go. So your father's a very wise man, Chris.